It's a game day edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com hanging out with you this morning, getting ready for Pitt, Syracuse tonight at the Petersen Events Center. That game is a 7 p.m. tip-off, thankfully. Not like that 9 o'clock game last week. I was cranky after that game. I recorded a Morning Pitt after that game at SMU last week. Watched it from home. I didn't go to Dallas. Thank God. Nobody would want to pay for plane tickets and lodging and all of those things that end up with the game that you ended up with last week. But it was a 9 o'clock tip-off, went very late, and then after the game we recorded a Morning Pitt after a 20-point blowout, and that wasn't exactly I can't say that we put a smiling face on that one. That was a cranky one. Tonight will not be the case because it's a 7 o'clock tip-off. It'll still be a little bit later when we're recording the Morning Pitt, but I happen to think the Pitt is going to win tonight. And so those are always more fun to do. Regardless, we've got a lot to talk about today to get you ready for Pitt, Syracuse. Panthers taking on the Orange, looking for the season sweep over Syracuse, see if they can pull it off against a team that they've already defeated once on the road, should be able to get them at home. Jaylen Lowe will be back. What does that mean for Pitt in the rotation? Will there still be minutes for that guy, Brandon Cummings, and Amsel Delilich? I know what all the fan base wants to see. What will Jeff Capel do? And whether Lowe is on the court a ton or not, whether Delilich and Cummings play a ton or not, there's still some basic things this team has to do that they might be trending in the right direction on. A few things we can take from the last Syracuse game and a few things we can take from the last couple of games that Pitt has played, particularly the Miami and SMU games. There's a few things I think we can look at and say, you know what? There might be something they can build on here. And we'll find out tonight if they're able to do it. This is going to be an ongoing series here. Every time, as long as they keep winning, every game we're going to talk about, this is a crucial game. I mean, every one of these 6 remaining regular season games is absolutely essential. Like I said yesterday, the door is still ajar for a spot in the NCAA tournament, but ever so slightly. And the margin for error is gone. There is no margin for error because if you slip up again, it's ACC tournament championship or bust. Now, the odds are low of either of those scenarios happening, winning out or winning the ACC tournament, but mathematically, it still exists. So let's talk about Pitt's resume. Let's talk about bringing Jaylen Lowe back into the mix. Let's talk about the things that Pitt needs to build on from the last 2 games, what they could build on from the previous Syracuse game. We got a lot to break down, so let's jump into it. The game day edition of the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, this series of old Big East foes, it's a long one, a long-running series, Pitt and Syracuse. They played 127 games, I think, coming into tonight. They were 50. Pitt was 50-76 against Syracuse. Prior to this season, they got the win at the Dome to go to 51-76. I was looking back through, since they joined the ACC, Pitt has met Syracuse home and home every year. Back in the Big East days, they would just play one game a season and occasionally meet in the Big East tournament. Since they joined the ACC, since both teams did, they've played as home and home. And I only counted 3 times that Pitt has swept the season series against Syracuse. 2014-15, they did it. They did it again the next year, 15-16, Jamie Dixon's last year, and actually won 3 games that year. They beat them home and home in the regular season and won again in the ACC tournament. And then 2 years ago, the 2022-23 season, Pitt swept Syracuse. Last year, they got swept by Syracuse. So they're already a step ahead of last year. But for this year's bigger goals, they need to sweep the Orange and win 2 games here, highlighted by tonight, with tonight's game being the most important. I think the previous time these 2 teams faced off, what was the date of that game? Why am I forgetting? January 25th. Up at Syracuse. Pitt fell down by, Pitt was down 9 in the first half. Another one of these games, which is all of these games where Pitt is trailed by a significant amount in the first half of an ACC contest, but the Panthers were able to battle back and win the second half. They cut it to a 1-point deficit at halftime and then pretty much controlled the second half. Jaylen Lowe had a huge game, one of his best games, actually, when just kind of across the board, 22 points, 6 assists and only 1 turnover, playing 34 minutes. Pitt had a big run at one point to really kind of take control of the game. I think it was like a 10-2 run, 10-3 run, and Jaylen Lowe scored 8 out of those 10 points. I mean, he had a big game, and Lowe will be back tonight. We'll get to that in a second. The other thing that really defined that game, that January 25th game, was the rebounding. Syracuse absolutely dominated on the boards. They out-rebounded Pitt by 17. I think it was 48-31 on the glass. And that was highlighted, of course, by Eddie Lampkin, who had 23 rebounds for Syracuse, including 8 offensive rebounds, contributed to the Orange having 20 total offensive rebounds. Now, you'd like to think going into tonight's game, it's not going to be quite as drastic, that you're not going to, Eddie Lampkin's going to get his, but that he's not going to get 23 rebounds in a game. You'd like to think you won't get out rebounded by 17. You'd like to think you won't give up 20 offensive rebounds. But the reality is they're still probably going to get out rebounded. They're still probably going to get beat on the glass. Lampkin's still probably going to get his, and they're probably going to get a decent amount of offensive rebounds. The key thing to take from that last game, and it was one of the best jobs Pitt did in this area like all season, because all season it's been an issue of giving up offensive rebounds and allowing teams to convert for second chance points. And that was maybe the biggest thing Pitt did well in that game, at least as it relates to rebounds, is that they didn't let Syracuse capitalize on getting 20 offensive boards. So Syracuse had 20 offensive rebounds and only 16 second chance points. I think that's huge. Now, 16 is a big number, but Pitt, who only had 9 offensive rebounds, also scored 16 second chance points. Like, that's really efficient. Like, that's really, you're 16 second chance points on 9 offensive rebounds. You scored almost every time you got an offensive board. 16 second chance points on 20 offensive rebounds, you were less than 50% of turning those offensive rebounds into points. And that's what needs to happen tonight. You're probably not going to win the battle on the glass, but you can minimize the damage. You can keep Syracuse from turning that advantage in rebounds into an advantage in the game, into a win, right? Like, if you're going to get beat on the glass, you need to make sure that those rebounds don't turn into points. And that was an issue earlier this season. It's been an issue throughout the season, where Pitt has gotten beat in rebounds most games. The Miami game on Saturday was an exception. Pitt won the rebounding battle there, I think 40-33. But Miami was not a very good rebounding team. I don't expect Pitt to win the rebounding battle tonight, but you have to minimize the damage. That's step one. That's one of the most important things that Pitt needs to do well in this game is, all right, if you're going to get beat on the glass, make sure it doesn't turn into anything more than just a rebound. Don't allow any additional stats to come out of that in favor of Syracuse other than just one notch in the rebounding column. Now, Jeff Capel said yesterday on the ACC coaches teleconference that he expects Jaylen Lowe to be back for this game tonight. Lowe missed the Miami game. And there's been it's probably like the outspoken portion of online Pitt fans, but that's what we have to gauge. We can't walk around the arena and take a poll of everyone of what they think about this topic or that topic. But what we see online, what some of the vocal, maybe minority, or maybe not, of Pitt fans, maybe it is representative of the larger fan base. There's a segment that are concerned about how Lowe will fit back in after missing that one game just because of what we saw out of the team on Saturday, particularly with how they pass the ball, how they move the ball, how just the general flow of the offense, of which there seemed to be more than there was previously. Whether that's all the absence of Jaylen Lowe or not, we talked about that a lot yesterday. I told you my theory was that to some extent, the other guys on the team who have been deferring to Jaylen Lowe and relying on him to make all the plays, and Ishmael Leggett as well, maybe elevated their level of play a little bit, got a little bit sharper, got a little bit more focused. You know what I mean? Got a little bit more fire in how they were playing, because they knew they wouldn't have Lowe to rely on. And I think there might be some truth to that. I think there also might be some truth to the fact that early on this season, Lowe and Leggett were playing so well that the rest of the team ended up sort of deferring to them. Well, we'll let Jaylen and Ish make the plays. Well, you need more than that. You need to be able to move the ball. And I think Saturday should have been a pretty strong demonstration of that. And I'm very curious to see how they look and what they do tonight when they get out on the court. If it looks like they took some lessons from Saturday's game with the way the ball was moving, with the way they passed, with the way they found each other for shots, and how they found good shots by moving the ball and shifting the defense. It's basic basketball stuff that tends to typically work if you do it and you really make an emphasis and make a point to do it. And they did it on Saturday. And so I'm curious to see what kind of lessons come from that. Like the players when they were on the court, how the offense felt as they were moving the ball, what it looked like to Jaylen Lowe as the ball moved like that. I'm not going to sit back here and say Lowe was the problem with the offense, because I don't think that's the case. I actually think he can be a big part of the solution with the offense. I think he can be a big part of why this offense works so well. But the ball needs to move like it did on Saturday. You're playing a defense that is, I think, better than Miami. Still not great, but better than Miami. Miami was pretty bad defensively, but that doesn't mean, just because you play a tougher defense doesn't mean you can't pass the ball well. And, against Syracuse the first time, Pitt only had 3 turnovers, which was another big factor in that game. Now, Jaylen Lowe did a lot of he had 19 field goal attempts on his own, so he wasn't passing all that much. I think he ended up with, he still ended up with 6 assists, though. So it was pretty much either he shot or he got the ball to somebody else who made a basket. But the last couple games, really, we've seen this team pass a little bit better. Even in the SMU game, they had 16 assists, but 6 different players had an assist. And also that was 16 assists on 21 made field goals, which try to forget the fact that they shot 21 of 66 from the floor. Just focus on the fact that they had 16 assists on 21 made field goals. That's pretty good. On Saturday against Miami, they had 15 assists on 25 made field goals. That's pretty good. Again, they had 6 different players record an assist. Ishmael Leggett over the last 3 games has 11 assists. He had tied his career high with 5 against Miami on Saturday. I'm saying all these numbers because maybe there's something clicking a little bit with moving the ball and what these guys have been able to do recently and what they maybe can do tonight. Jeff Capel was asked yesterday in the ACC coaches teleconference about Ishmael Leggett and his assist numbers, how he has 11 over the last 3 games. And the question was, have you noticed him take a step forward as a playmaker, and how has that affected the rest of the offense? Capel said, quote, "I just think he's passed more. I think he's understanding that teams are really in gaps. They're playing him as if he won't pass," which, timeout. Pause quote for a second. They're playing him as if he won't pass. Look, you got to get it through your head here. Okay, if you're Pitt, if you're Jaylen Lowe, if you're Ishmael Leggett, particularly those 2 guys, and Jeff Capel should be emphasizing this point, they don't think you're going to pass. The other teams don't think you're going to pass. Recognize that. They think your tendency is to not pass, which says something about how you've played in your decision-making over the past 10 games, 14 games. But set that aside, it also says something about the defensive tendency, that the opportunities are going to be there. So Capel's quote, "They're playing him as if he won't pass, and he's done a better job the past few games of making those passes, getting off the basketball when there's a guy guarding him, and maybe 2 guys in the gap trying to see if he'll pass it. And so I think he's done a better job of that." End quote. Leggett and Lowe need to recognize that. If teams are playing, just sort of assuming they're not going to pass, guess what you should do? Pass. Okay? All these conversations we've had about how this team should be better than they are, and they've fallen short of expectations, and they should be better, and it doesn't make sense. They're disappointing because I think they're more talented than what their record and their performance has indicated. Well, here's one way to try to get closer to that level. Pass the ball and let the whole team score like they did on Saturday. And like they have at other points this season with Lowe out there. Jaylen Lowe needs to make plays for this team. Ishmael Leggett needs to make plays for this team. What they all need to understand is that you can make plays by driving and shooting and scoring, and you can also make plays by setting up Amsal Delilich, Zach Austin, Guillermo Diaz-Graham, pick and roll, or screen and roll with Cam Corhin. Like, there are a lot of opportunities out there. There are a lot of guys who can score on this team. It's not as gifted an offensive team as last year's team was, or quite frankly, probably 2 years ago, just because those two teams had a Blake, and this year's team does not have Blake. But there are guys who can score. There are guys that you can get the ball to, who can shoot, who can drive, who can make jump shots, who can make dunks. How many times Brandon Cummings threw 2 alley-oops to Cam Corhin on Saturday? Like, those options are there. The opportunities are there. The players are there. And even if they're not as good offensively, maybe not as gifted offensively as they were last year, they're still able to score. That's how you've got to make plays. Sometimes you need to take the ball. If you're legged or you're low, sometimes you need to take the ball and go to the hoop and make a big play, get the floater or the jump shot or whatever you need to do or want to do. And sometimes you need to set up those other guys. Now, the rotation, we'll see what it looks like, particularly with Lowe back in the mix. I think you're going to have your starting lineup of Lowe, Leggett, Austin, Guillermo, and Cam Corhin. But that's 5 guys. You're going to have to bring Brandon Cummings off the bench. You're going to have to bring Amsal Delilich off the bench. You're going to have to bring Jorge Diaz-Graham off the bench. And I like that they used Amsal Delilich as the point on Saturday, but you can't pigeonhole him into that role, or else you're never going to put him on the floor because Jaylen Lowe is never going to come off. So you've got to use Delilich in as the 2, as the 3, as the 4. You've got to use Cummings as the 2. You've got to. I think you need to get those guys on the floor. I think you need to get them out there in the court. If it means Guillermo playing more 5, that's not a bad idea. But you've got to get those guys out there. They've shown they can help you win. You don't have to play him 35 minutes. You don't have to play him 25 minutes. But I think Amsal Delilich did well enough on Saturday to earn 20 minutes tonight or more. Now, Jeff Capel, basically said he didn't intend to play Amsal Delilich as many minutes as he did on Saturday, and it was only because Delilich was playing well. So I guess you got to, I guess you just got to keep earning minutes with every minute you're on the court. You have to use it to earn more minutes if you're got certain guys who are below a certain line, I guess. But I think Delilich earned that, earned some opportunities, and we'll see if he gets it. Look, this is a game Pitt should win. This is a game they have to win. If they want to keep their NCAA tournament chances and hopes alive, they need to win this game. I think they can. I think they will. And I think tonight could be very much a game that we look at and we're like, wow, it seems like they're carrying over some of the things they did in the Miami game on Saturday. Taking some of those things they did well in that one and carrying it forward. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to show that. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing if some of these guys end up in the rotation. You know what I mean? If Cummings and Delilich play more. I'm looking forward to seeing if this team really did learn a lesson from Saturday's game and moves the ball better. And then, like I say, they'll have to limit those second chance points. That's probably one of the biggest keys in tonight's game. All right, should be a fun one. Should be a good one. Look, if you're walking past the press area, say hello. We always like doing that. You guys see me on the video now, so you know what I look like. So if you want to say hello, shout out to the guy. I wish I should know his name. I see him before every game, but he told me before the game on Saturday, Amsal Delilich was going to have 13 points and 9 rebounds. He didn't quite get there on the boards, but he had the points, though. Ended up with 14, so he overshot that goal. But hey, you got a prediction. Walk by when you walk by the press area. Come up, give me your prediction. We'll see who can get one close on this. Outside of just predicting that Pitt will win, because I think most of us probably expect that they will, or at least think that they should. So that'll be fun. But anyway, all right. Thanks for watching today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I hope your week got off to a great start yesterday. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll be back to recap it with you tomorrow morning on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.